Today I'm going to tell you the story of a farmer in Burkina Faso in Africa. He's greening the desert. What he's doing is, I'm used to actually using my hands a lot and I feel a bit handicapped just now, but anyway, bear with me. What he's doing is he goes around and he digs holes so that the water can seep in, and into each of those holes he puts a pile of leaves and other scrap that he finds. And together with his team, they do this. They build holes, they put a little plant into each, and they are making the desert green. So far, they've done about 62 acres of land, which is really quite a sizable area. And they do it just by working together. They involve the village, the people in the village, and the people in the next village, and it's making a difference. There's something similar, I have to keep going back to my notes, and I'm sorry about that, but I don't have a very good memory. Something similar is going on in China, in the Kabuki Desert. 2,000 square kilometres of desert have actually been converted. And this is desert that wasn't meant to be desert, so it's okay to green it again. And the thing is with all of this, that when water runs into these holes, it stays there and it helps the plants grow. When it rains, the water stays in the holes. And when it doesn't rain, the plants actually survive much better because they have a little organic nest to be in. Much better chance of survival, and this really makes a difference. So each and every hole becomes like a living sponge. It's holding and it's managing the water for the plants. This is relevant to what Thomas was just talking about before. So this man, his name is Yakuba Saradoga, he's, in his very humble way, actually made a real difference. But you know, when you think about it, all he does is he goes around and he digs holes. And then he gets the village involved and the next village, and it makes a difference. So in this area, they now have a green space where once there was just sand. They have crops growing. That means they have income coming in, and they actually have hope. I think it's really incredibly cool, actually. I have so many gadgets here. Right, I'm going to change the picture to something completely different. I'm going to tell you a personal story here. I've been involved in soil making for many years, for 10 years. Shock, I suppose. Total panic. I was really worried about the future and where all this was going to go, and if it was already too late, and, you know, all the questions. Do you know these questions? Do you worry like this sometimes? And I really didn't know what to do. I felt really bad. Anyhow, I went and did this walk 800 kilometres across Spain. You might know it, it's called the Camino. It's a really fantastic walk, but it's quite tough. And my feet were hurting all the time and they were bleeding all the time. So to take my mind off that, I got really absorbed in what was going on. And I was looking at all the backyards we were passing by. And you know what? In all of those back gardens, there were vegetables growing. Because people here in this northern part of Spain, it's quite a poor area, so they grow vegetables because they always have done, and because it's how they eat. I don't know, but it was like this for my grandparents in New Zealand, and maybe your grandparents as well growing up. You grow vegetables because you have to. It just makes sense. And this, to me, just made perfect sense. So, we're swinging from one thing to another here. This is my garden in Sweden. I'm a gardener. I grow all my vegetables. I cook every meal. I live super healthy and I really enjoy it. But when I started up my garden 20 years ago, I actually had no soil. It was really shocking. It was just rock solid clay. I couldn't even get a spade into the ground. It was hopeless, so I didn't know what to do. So I started feeding the soil. I started nurturing the soil. I just put year after year after year enormous amounts of organic material into the soil. And eventually it worked out. I have fantastic soil. Everything grows. I'm actually not a very good gardener, but everything grows because the soil is so good. And I just have really good luck with stuff. So I'm quite happy for that. But along the way, I discovered a process to do it better and faster and actually much more healthy and climate smart. And that's the thing we're talking about here called bokashi. And I'm just really passionate about it, as you probably can tell. So I got other people started. I got my neighbours involved and the people in the town where I live in Sweden and some of the cities nearby and the whole country eventually. We run a web shop. I still run a business in Sweden. It's funding this project here. And we got the whole country involved. And it's becoming a little bit mainstream. Our neighbours, Scandinavian neighbours, got involved, Norway, Denmark, Finland. And the whole of Europe is gradually joining in as well. This is not because we started it. This is from Japan originally, but it's just that we've been kind of pushing it quite hard in Sweden and making it reasonably mainstream, which is fantastic. So the amazing thing is that you have these thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of households all over Scandinavia now, growing their own food in balconies, backyards, colony allotment gardens, community gardens, using the organic waste from their kitchens. And this, I think, is really super cool. So, next picture. Did we? Yeah. These guys are here. And so now, me and my team in Myanmar, that's in the NAA, they're sitting back there. Yep, wave. Hello. We want to do something similar here because it's really needed and it's really time. And so we're all about making soil. And you see there's two things going on here. And the weird thing is that, well, we don't really know which is worse. They're both quite bad things. But the weird thing is that problem A is the solution to problem B, and problem B is actually the solution to problem A. Problem A is the trash. The whole Yangon is full of it, the whole Myanmar actually, the whole Asia, we all know about that. But the other problem, B, is it's actually the soil that's getting so bad we can hardly grow anything in it anymore. The soil is dying. Yeah. And we're losing it. We're currently losing fertile soil at the rate of 24 billion tonnes per year. And I always have to check this number because I can't believe it, but it says 24 billion tonnes per year here on my paper too. We're losing soil. And that's according to a recent UN report on combating desertification. So these deserts that we were talking about before, they don't have to be deserts. It's just that they are coming for many different reasons. But the reason is we don't look after our soil. So it's not healthy, it's not stable, and therefore it washes away and blows away. And actually there's a third problem here. Let's call that C. It's getting harder and harder to get chemical-free food. And even if a lot of people are trying, like Katie here, doing a fantastic job, there's never going to be enough to go around. Like healthy food, chemical-free food is really scarce and valuable, super valuable. So I'm going to add a D and an E in a minute, but let's take these three first things because they're quite big. We have trash, we have soil, and we have food, just to get started. Right. So, the trash. Two-thirds of the waste here in Yangon is actually organic, two-thirds. That's stuff like cabbage leaves, coconut husks, fish heads, dead flowers, you name it. And the other third is inorganic, which is glass and plastic, of course, obviously, metal, that sort of thing. And so what doesn't get recycled, as we all know it does with the trash pickers and so on, what doesn't get recycled goes to landfill, in best case, and that can be measured. And as we know, what doesn't go to landfill goes in the river. We all know about that. So Me and my team here spend quite a lot of time actually looking in these great big orange dumpster bins that the YCDC put out. They're really disgusting. They're as disgusting as you would imagine. We talk to a lot of trash pickers. We look at every market stand we go past. We actually think the numbers make reasonable sense. But the really horrible thing about this is that when you add up the numbers, or the numbers that we're getting, is there's 2,000 to 3,000 tonnes of waste of organic waste going to landfill every day, and I have to double check that because I can't believe it. 2,000 or 3,000 tonnes of organic waste going to landfill every day in Yangon. And that's stuff that should be going back to the soil because it's so absolutely needed in the soil. But it's not. And actually no one has a clue how to do it. So it's in the too hard basket completely. And what happens then when it goes to landfill? Yeah, it just gets mixed with everything else. And it emits huge amounts of greenhouse gases. And we won't even talk about the fire last year. So half of the organic waste, the plastic stuff is another story, but half of the organic waste actually disappears or evaporates or whatever up into the atmosphere as carbon gases, which we absolutely don't need more of. And the worst is most of that is methane. And the other half just turns into some sort of poisonous mess on the ground, which will really be there forever, being useless for everyone. So that's the trash side of things. The trash side of things. Yep. Please change. Nope. Okay. So A was the trash and B is the soil. Let's talk about the soil. And our soil is in desperately bad shape. It's actually all over the world, actually. Yangon is no exception and Myanmar is no exception, but soil is in bad shape. And we're talking about soil, it's too sandy and so it can't hold nutrients, it can't hold water. We're talking about soil that's so heavy with like sticky clay that it's hard for things to grow in. And so it's either way, it's soil, it's exactly what Thomas was talking about. It's soil that holds too much water, it's soil that holds too little water. And it's soil that's just like washing away all the time because it's not organised properly on a biologically. So in particular, we're talking also about soil that's poisoned with chemicals and the plants just don't want to grow in it really. But actually there's something we're not talking about, and that is about the carbon in the soil, that we're not feeding the soil. The soil is starved, it's starved of organic matter. And that picture Thomas put up where they were burning the paddies or whatever, I mean, it's just heartbreaking because that organic material should be going back into the soil. It's there, it's just being wasted. And we're just going on for half a century, basically, taking stuff out of our soil and not putting anything back. And the only comparison I can think of is it's like going to the gym for your whole life and never eating or something like that. I mean, it's just crazy, it doesn't hold. But this is what we're doing. So the tricky thing is this, that it's the organic material in the soil that gives it its life energy. This is the reason why soil does what it does. This is why plants grow, is because the soil is living. If the soil's not living, the plants don't grow, and game over. All right. So the food. Apart from Katie's food, all our other food is getting more and more poisoned, and we're all aware of it, and we're all trying to eat more and more organic food. But it's actually hard for farmers to grow as much organic food as we would potentially like to buy. Partly because the soil itself is quite bad and it has no nutrients. And the other thing is because it's not that easy to get organic fertilisers. They're not really, they're expensive and they're hard to get. The chemical ones are another story. And if you don't feed your soil and it's an organic farm, it doesn't work. So on top of this, our soil is way less nutritious than when we were kids or when our parents were growing up. And the same story again, if the soil doesn't have the nutrients, the food is not going to have it either. So there we have the trash, the soil and the food. And I did say that was A, B and C. I did say there was going to be a D and an E. But first, just to sum up a little bit here. We have phenomenal volumes of food waste that are going to landfill or maybe into the river. We're burning valuable brown leaves. Don't even have time to talk about that disgusting mess. We have soil that is dead and dying, and we don't know what to do with it. We have food that's lacking in nutrients and actually quite toxic. Start to see how all this hangs together. So D, the next big point in all of this is actually the climate change issue. Yeah. No. Yes. Sorry. D is climate change. It's global warming, greenhouse gases. It's a carbon thing, right? And it means we have far too much carbon in the air and nowhere near enough carbon in the soil. And this carbon that's going into the air comes in part from rotting organic material. This is our part of the business. It's not just the cow farts. It's the rotting organic material. And a lot of that is methane, of course, which is far worse than the carbon dioxide. Carbon is everything that's once been living. It's like you and me and the dog next door and the plants and trees and the garden and the fruit and vegetables at the market stand. That's all carbon. And we should be putting it into the soil and not back into the air. So anything that we can do to stop it going up into the atmosphere is brilliant, of course. And it's actually needed because we really have got more than enough already in the air. But there's an E, and that is this serious situation with the soil. We have a huge... Please change. Hang on. Okay. We have a huge carbon deficiency in the soil. Way too less carbon in the soil. And this is a huge issue, but it's just one that we're not talking about at all. Our soils are starving for organic matter. And again, the organic matter is the carbon, it's the plants, and it's the trees, and it's the, whatever that's once been living. And we have so much of this stuff. And what are we doing? Burning it, throwing it out, taking it to landfill, just wasting it, treating it like we just, don't need it for anything. And there's actually a measure for this. It's called, Thomas mentioned it's called soil organic carbon, SOC. And it's, you can test it. There's a company here in Yangon, and we actually have Vera here representing the company a little bit. It's called Proximity Design, so they do these soil tests, but it's not really what you would think. Like, hardly anyone has 10% soil organic carbon in their soil. That would be a dream for most farmers. They're very often, farmers or anyone here with a garden, struggling along with 1 or 2% soil carbon, 1 or 2%. And remember, this is the stuff that gives soil its life. This is what differentiates living soil from dead soil, is the carbon in the soil. And it's that low, the levels are that low. They used to be much higher half a century ago. Global soils contain 2 to 3 times the amount of carbon than the atmosphere, which is quite interesting when we know the atmosphere has too much and the soil is screaming for more. The soil can take 2 to 3 times more than the atmosphere. And there's a lot of effort going into this. There's a global movement which is called 4 per thousand, and that's based on that if we would put 0.4%, if we would create a 0.4% increase of carbon every year in the soil, which is like 4 parts per thousand, it would actually stop the increase in carbon dioxide or carbon gases to the atmosphere, which is quite extraordinary when you think about it, because the recipe is, on the surface, very simple. It's just like, take everything that's basically carbon-based and get it into the soil and stop burning it, stop taking it to landfill, stop doing everything else. So there is a lot of effort going into this. kind of my mantra in life, this thing with feed the soil, and I nag about it all the time, but it's just a huge issue. So, okay, let's talk about solutions, and I'm thinking you've probably already figured this out because we're just connecting the dots here between organic waste and needing to feed the soil. If we can get this organic material into the soil, the faster the better really, because it's actually very, very urgent, obviously. And there's just one thing I'd like you to remember, and that's this, that if we're going to eat in the future, we really need to feed the soil now. It's really that simple. If we're going to eat in the future, we have to feed the soil now, or otherwise it's just not going to happen. So what are we going to do about it? And I'm really sorry, maybe I made this sound kind of more scary, or sound really scary, but actually it's deadly serious. So we need to do what we can. And there are solutions. We're working with this. And I think we can learn from the people that are doing something. Look at this farmer in Burkina Faso. He's just a guy, right? And he's digging holes. And he's making a difference. We can copy him. There's these guys in China that are grieving the desert. They're also more or less digging holes and putting stuff in them. We can copy them. We can learn from them. There's all the people all around the world that are working with bokashi, and there's many, many, many of us now, and some even in this room, doing their bit in their own corner and encouraging friends and neighbours and people to do something more. And we can learn from them. The thing is, we just have to scale it up actually and make it happen now. So actually, this is our idea here at Bokashi Myanmar. We're working with this in real life, and because it's what we do. Our vision is to get all the organic waste off the streets of Yangon and into the soil. We just don't want to see it going to landfill. And we wanted to make it so easy to make soil that everybody does it. And also to make it so easy to grow stuff that you can grow, mangoes and tomatoes and roselle and whatever you like on a street corner or on a balcony or in your backyard or on an urban farm or whatever. There's a lot more I could tell you about what we're doing, but that's another story for another night, really. But bokashi is basically a fermentation process where you take food waste, any kind of food waste, you ferment it in barrels, and you dig it down into the soil. And it makes the best soil. It's actually a seriously good method. And that's the reason we're putting so much effort into it, because it really does make sense. So we're doing lots of projects here in Yangon, and they're all on our Facebook page. Check our Facebook page. It's called Bokashi Myanmar, BOKASHI. And anytime if you want to learn from us what we're doing, you're really welcome to come up and we'll show you and we'll tell you about our projects, because they're all a little bit different, and we're working just to spread this message. We're also working with a company here in Yangon called Recyclo. You maybe know of them? Yeah. And we have an editor here tonight. Yes, there. Hello. Yeah. And Recyclo organises recyclables on a really grand scale. They do logistics and they collect stuff and make sure it's delivered properly to everyone. So we've teamed up with them to do organic waste, which means that using our method, they're collecting up organic waste as we work this out from hotels, corporates, maybe households, and we'll be delivering it to our new compost farm, which we're starting next week up in North Yangon, where we have our base. So we're teaming up with lots of different people, and in the different projects we're working with schools, we're working with the Plant House, we're working actually in a slum project in East Yangon, we're working in many, many different situations, and they're all a bit different, but the basis is all the same. And we're just really passionate about doing this, and we're trying to spread the word as much as we possibly can so that we do. Oh, okay, that's also down, sorry. So. Okay. The other thing we want to do is actually just make it fun. This is a gourd that we grew in our yard in North Yangon. In our yard, like every other yard in Yangon, I think it's 1/2 metre deep of sand, and that's it, construction sand. I mean, like it's a desert, you can't grow anything in that, says everybody. And we have been digging down, I'm not sure, but maybe 6,000 metres of bokashi since we started this in July, August, into that little tiny yard. It's just a normal house rack. And we've got this gourd growing, and we're feeding all the neighbours because we're really overboard at this stage. We've got so many of them. But we're growing this in the desert in Yangon. So it's our little urban desert that we have made green. And we figured if you could do this, anyone can do it. If we could do this, then anyone can do it. And it's really quite straightforward. It's not rocket science, it's not expensive, it's not difficult. The thing is really that we have to work together. We have to do what these other guys are doing and dare to inspire our workmates and our neighbours and our colleagues and get people going and get this change happening on a really small scale, close to home. Because if we're enough people talking about it and we start this conversation and get it going really big, I think really we can make a difference, even just we normal people. And that's way better than being scared about climate change. So I'd really like to thank you for being here, listening to this. Come and talk to us afterwards in the AA and Itika about bokashi and recycling and anything at all you like. Thank you so much.